Let's talk about Sandra Birchmore a bit. I know you've been following it. We are just beginning to follow it. This is a horrible, horrible case involving a Stoughton police officer and possibly some others, where basically they had the Police Explorer program. Kids come in, discover, oh, is this an area I want to get into in life? It's a great, great thing. Until one of the officers looks at the 15-year-old and goes, I want a piece of that, which is exactly what happened. He groomed her, had sex with her for years. She gets pregnant at the age of 23 after all of this. And then at the end of the day, it looks like, oh, I don't want this to get out because I'm married and I have kids. And now the allegation is that that officer then killed Sandra Birchmore, just to cover it all up so he would not get in trouble. And he's now been charged in the murder after that relationship federally as well. Tell me about that a little bit. This being a federal case.
Right. It's so interesting. They used a very unique statute, which I believe is Title 18, 1512 from my memory. And that statute basically says if you kill a government witness or potential government witness in a federal case, that you then are eligible up to the death penalty and certainly life in prison if you're convicted of that. That's what they charged him with. So what was the underlying federal crime? Well, it was sex with a minor. It was sex exploitation using coercion. And that statute, I think, 2242, Title 18, 2242. Again, I'm going from my memory.
Mm-hmm.
And those are serious violations, but they're so seldom used.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was ingenious to use this, and that's why the FBI's Civil Rights Squad worked this case, not their public corruption case. But make no mistake, the FBI is going to get to the bottom of how was this ruled a suicide? Is this medical examiner was just incompetence? Was it laziness? Or was there something more nefarious to it? And how about the individuals with the state police that investigated this? Did they not notice she was in the middle of doing laundry when she decided to kill herself?
Yeah.
Like closing the washer, closing the dryer, excited booking a photo session regarding her baby to be born in 3 months. Did they not look at all these text messages where she was excited? She wasn't depressed. You know, how was their optics so completely juxtaposed to what the feds found quite easily, I might say?
Well, and that's where we're starting to look at the corruption here. Matthew Farwell is the name of the officer that's been charged, but there's also allegations here that may have not just been him that was involved with her sexually. Could have been. Tell me about that a little bit, because I'm finding bits and pieces here. No one else has been charged at this moment in time other than him, but it looks like this could kind of go really dark really quick.
Oh, I agree. First of all, his brother, it's purported had sexual relations with her, another Stoughton police officer, another officer from another department, and multiple others that were involved. And, when you look, you talked about that Explorer program. She became an Explorer at the age of 12.
Oh.
He was taking her to the library, befriending her on Facebook, truly grooming methods. And then finally at 15, he had sex with her, and they talk all about it in these text messages where, about how she gave it to him and that she would have done it earlier. And he said, well, I wish I would have known that. I would have tried earlier. It's so sick to see how he took advantage of her in his position as a law enforcement officer of this young girl. And I can tell you, I worked, or you wouldn't say worked in, I was a teacher and instructor for the FBI in the Explorer program my first year as an FBI agent. And those kids look so much up to you. They want to, some people might want to be a movie star or an astronaut. These kids want to be agents and officers. And there's no one that they think of put on a higher pedestal than law enforcement. And he took advantage of that. It's sick.
It is. I mean, there's also connection here to Canton PD. Can you explain what that connection is?
Well, there is a connection. She had an apartment in Canton. The original officers that showed up obviously were Canton officers. Of course, Canton is where John O'Keefe died in the front lawn. He was a Canton resident. So if you look at that, and then the fact that any murder investigation, again, no matter where it happens in Massachusetts, is going to go to the district attorney's office and the state police. They're responsible by law to investigate, not the Canton police, in other words. But again, this was not viewed as a homicide. So the number one thing I think that's very important to consider for everybody just jumping on the bandwagon and saying, see, there's police corruption, we have to look at the ME because, for an example, in the Ellen Greenberg case, homicide then went to suicide. Once an ME says something, a loss of life is a suicide, it puts such a roadblock for law enforcement because how do you have a medical examiner say it's a suicide and then you're going to try to prove it's a homicide?
Hmm.
It's a huge hurdle. And for those who don't know, who have never investigated a homicide, those detectives are right there. Typically, they're a good detective with the ME.
Hmm.
They at least put one agent officer there so they know right away at that autopsy what they're looking at.
Yeah.
So if you look at the paperwork, it keeps saying suicide, suicide, suicide. Like no mention really of a homicide. And so where the buck has to start is with that ME who made that conclusion.
Are we going to see charges there with the medical examiner? Are we going to see any sort of repercussions? Because it just seems so often, we go to the perpetrator, but somebody's playing along with the perpetrator to make this happen, to tip the scales. Where do you think that's going to go?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because this is potentially a death penalty case.
Yeah.
So there's a lot on the line for Farwell. In other words, there's a lot of negotiation, Candy. So will he cooperate
Hmm.
if anything nefarious has gone on? If he used his influence, friendships, if he did anything to influence this investigation, you know, I think he's going to cough it up, but it's going to have to be corroborated, right? I mean,
Hmm.
we know he's a liar.
Yeah.
We know he's a fraudster if the allegations prove out. I mean, we've seen it in the documents. He is something. So I'd put nothing past him in terms of blaming others for what he did. But if there's any concrete evidence of that, others being involved, and if this ends up being a cover up, oh my gosh, the Bureau's going to figure it out.
Yeah.
But make no mistake, some of the people involved in the Reed investigation, of just a couple, were involved in this loosely, but kind of loosely. Like if you look at Fanning, Fanning was the one. Okay, so the same person who did the digital analysis of phones in the Reed case did Guarino. He did the digital analysis of Birchmore's Apple computer.
Hmm.
That's it that I could find. Not of any other phones or anything, of
Uh-huh.
the Apple computer and that messaging system, which of course, you know, oftentimes, depending on exactly what he looked at, could incorporate text messages and things like that that could have been hooked to the phone.
Sure.
He only took a year's worth. And then you had Fanning. He's the one that did the report saying there was nothing threatening in any of the messages and no, nothing that Matt did. I always thought it was interesting. He called Farwell, the person now accused of murdering her and staging her suicide, Matt,
Yeah.
in his official police report. Who does that?
Someone who's really close to Matt, someone who's on a first name basis with Matt is
Oh,
who does that. Someone who in
but
the Karen Reed case also goes, oops, we don't have those strings of messages. They're not there. Like, what else didn't you have in this case, in the Birchmore case? It seems we're seeing a bit of a pattern of behavior here.
well, it looks terrible, but we do know that the federal authorities thanked very specifically the Massachusetts State Police. They thank this, or yes, the Massachusetts State Police. They thank Stoughton, and they sent Fanning on the arrest. So, I mean, if they think he's a part of this, they're not going to have him be part of the arrest team, for heaven's sakes.
You'd think
So,
not, but maybe they just don't know enough yet. Maybe they still need to get into some more information. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. There just seems to be a lot of weird corruption going on in this part of the country with their police departments.
yeah, we'll see. I've always said this is incompetence
Hmm.
mimics corruption.
Sure.
And people always want to jump to the corruption. Oh, see, they're corrupt. No, maybe that ME, I think I've possibly shared this story. One instance when I went to an autopsy, the ME was talking on the phone the entire time to his lover. He was married, about hooking up. He forgot his camera. I had to run to the FBI office to get a camera. He was so ill situated because he had his phone on his shoulder. He was asking me to like help weigh the organs. I was taking notes for him because he was so caught up in this phone call. I was so angry about that. The person that I was dealing with in this case had a broken mandible, which is hard. And he ended up coming up with the conclusion that he was unsure whether it was a homicide or not. I couldn't believe it. So I actually ordered another autopsy from another ME because he was so
Oh,
incompetent and terrible. So for people who think that these MEs, are their word is the bottom line,
yeah.
just look at the Greenberg case.
Yes.
20 stab wounds, 10 to the posterior part, a huge gash in her head. Oh, that's now a suicide. So
Yeah. Wouldn't it be shocking if the ME is the same ME for that one? I know it's not, but it's like, oh, by the way, oh, it did Ellen Greenberg's too. Like, oh, you're a good one. Uh, this is going to be fascinating to watch, and to see, what lives are changed here, and what sort of corruption is called out and truth to power is brought against it. I was shocked when I heard about this one, but it looks like there's some corruption going on.
well, Tony, I want to say this really quick. To make an alignment, though, between the facts and
Mhm.
circumstances of Sandra Birchmore's case and Karen Reed's case is an absolute adulteration
Mhm.
of what Birchmore went through.
Sure.
The fact that she was likely murdered, that suicide was staged, every totally different deal, totally different
Yep.
department, different perpetrator, totally different set of circumstances. And to take a brush and say somehow Karen Reed is like Birchmore is just
No.
really bad. And you see that floating around. So unfortunately,
Yeah.
Sandra Birchmore suffered.
Certainly. And it's two different departments, but it's like you're in the same playground, basically. There's a group over here, a group over here. Every once in a while, there's some people who play with the other team a little bit, but they're two separate things that are going on here. But it's just a little too close for comfort. And I know they're completely separate cases. But my God, just the shocking. I mean, but I guess, and this is just what we know about. This is because it was called out, because it was caught. You have to wonder, how often are these things happening in places where it never gets caught? It's just,
So
it's
true.
horrible.
And never right.
No,
And there were no threatening messages from Matt.
no, no.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
yeah. Hey, thanks for checking out the video. Be sure to follow us wherever you download podcasts, and especially Apple Podcasts, where you can get advanced episode and premium content on our premium channel right there. Also, be sure to follow us on social media so you don't miss any breaking updates on the stories that matter to you most. We're on TikTok, X, Instagram, Facebook. Just search Hidden Killers Podcast with Tony Brueski, and you'll find us right there. Again, thanks for watching.